They weren't protests, but they certainly were demonstrations to try to prove a point here or to get some awareness or get some help for a terrible, terrible situation we've got here in Rhode Island and elsewhere. And that's kind of a wordy start to the broadcast, but words don't explain how many people are dying due to drug overdoses these days. And we have done, I don't know, Jess, how many? Maybe half a dozen shows so far in our tenure here on this epidemic, and there is no quota until this thing gets better. There were folks who demonstrated yesterday at the inauguration ceremonies kind of as a, not a protest, but a hello type of thing, and two of them are here tonight to be able to talk to us about what's going on. God bless you for watching the Dan York version of the television show, sort of, whatever is it called? Oh, what do we call it? State of Mind. You know, I run over from the radio every day, and sometimes I get mixed up between the two. Yeah, radio noon to 3 on WPRO and State of Mind on MyRITV, weeknights 7:30 and 11:30. By the way, I notice due to the ratings overnights that we get that a lot of you watch at 11:30, and that's good. It's kind of like catching the late mass on Saturday or Sunday when you. Anyway, rundown. Let's go to the rundown. It is, and I'll tell you why. Got a little bit more insight, maybe a little bit more on this. I promise that we're going to keep following this conversation. It was a celebration yesterday, and I think there's some pretty interesting and funny stuff that people say during these celebrations. And then that's all I have to say about that right now. He survived, you know, kind of barely, and had one of the most awkward moments I've seen in Washington in a long time. And this, although it's on the bottom of a rundown, is a very serious concern and really is topping the news nationally. All right, let's dig in. So I could not start the show without talking about this, and this is what I tweeted out, that Rhode Island is a lesser place when I found out last night that Jim Barron had passed away. There'll be more programming on Jim Barron, maybe as soon as tomorrow, because he deserves a conversation. We talked on the radio over an hour today about Jim. You know, some of these, when we lose principles like Jim Barron, we need to pause. This guy is an old-time journalist with a skill set that was phenomenal, both for reportorial and editorial, for commentary and for reporting. He was gritty. He was old school. He was irascible at times, but he was a phenomenal journalist and had a heart of gold. And while I plan on having some folks in to talk about him who knew him even better than I did. Now listen, when I heard he had passed away and had been ill for a couple of months, I felt a pang of guilt because I was unaware of that. When I saw that he had passed away, I felt like I lost an old friend. That's the kind of guy that he is, and I'm sure so many readers feel that way as well. I just want to play this funny clip. You know, Jess and I were kind of fumbling through a couple of his visits here to Dan York's State of Mind, and actually, this is Jim. Now, one of the steadiest minds in what's happening in Rhode Island is no doubt Jim Barron. Honored to have you, my friend.
I'm honored to be here, Dan. Thank you much.
Good to see you. Jim, you know, Chris Christie, Jim, all working on a little weight thing. It might catch on. I might actually start focusing a little bit.
You know, fat guys rule the world.
I can't even believe he's gone. And he's not replaceable. More as the week rolls on. Godspeed, and my condolences to all who loved him, which is the whole state, as well, of course, its family and friends. Paw Sox rumors. I don't know what to tell you. Here was the headline that we've been talking about. This is like a military lockdown when it comes down to the intel on what's going on with the Paw Sox being purchased by a group of Red Sox investors. There are a couple of rumors out there. ABC6's Mark Curtis ran a story last week, wondering out loud about a relocation of the Paw Sox. Nick Cafardo of the Boston Globe, who broke the story about the sale, wondered out loud about it a couple of days later as to whether they would move. Other than that, there doesn't seem to be anything substantial in the mill about a new location. And to remind you about how it kind of works, Mike Tamburo was with us, you know, months ago, talking about how the whole logistics of McCoy work.
It's owned by the city of Pawtucket,
right,
leased to the state, and we lease it from the state.
And the reason there's that three-pronged formula is why?
Because really the state and the ball club needed to step in the shoes of the city to renovate the building. The city wasn't in the position to help get that accomplished. And so it took the help of the state and it took the help of the ball club to
And
make
that
it
lease
happen.
runs how
They
long?
just extended the lease for 5 additional years, which runs through the 21 season with an automatic renewal of 5. So it'll take us to 2026.
Yeah. You know, and unless the new entity has the option to not honor that lease, I don't know where they're going. So don't get your panties in a bundle just yet over the Paw Sox leaving. It makes sense that there'd be reviews. I mean, if New Hampshire's kind of hustling in on us or some other place in Massachusetts, whatever, there would be damage done so significant to lose the Paw Sox to the psychology and the economy of Rhode Island, no doubt. But you know what? I think there's a way to argue the point that it can't happen. And I'll come up with some theories on that down the line. Anyway, I'm doing the best. It's a very, very quiet conversation going on. Next item. Day one, inauguration. Now, we were all over it yesterday when it was day one, but here's Eyewitness News kind of recap after this headline of the comeback pledge last night.
A winter water fire sparks a new era for Rhode Island. The small state took a big step forward Tuesday with the inauguration of its first female governor. Many braved the cold to witness history.
We were freezing, but it was just great. I was so pleased to be there.
It's historical. She's a woman, and so am I. And we got to go with the business there.
It's been a long day, but I'm glad to be part of history in Rhode Island.
That history taking place on the south portico of the State House as the snow fell.
And it was a beautiful day, and everybody came out, and we showed that we're pretty tough and hardy here in Rhode Island because it was snowing and it was cold, and we powered through it.
She's a woman, and so am I. It's historical. Okay. She made a good move, the new governor did, hiring David Cruz as her liaison to the General Assembly. He's a former top aide to Senator Montalbano, a magistrate. I'm guessing he might be taking a little bit of a pay cut, but he likes the action. Smart, sensible guy who could, I think, offer some equity of the governor to the House Speaker. You know what I mean? Because even though we champion the governorship, it's the House Speaker that's got all the marbles. He could help to even that out. Good hire. But I'm still waiting for some metrics. And the 2-5-10, the 2-5-10 that she threw at us during the speech, unacceptable. But it's only day 2. It's historical. I'm a woman, and so is she. Yeah, I'm not. I think. So, you know what? It feels better than this guy. That's the one thing. The honeymoon period is just incredible when you compare it to who's left. Now, I wish him all the health and happiness for the next 60 years, Link Chafee. But if this doesn't typify what we've been talking about, have you seen this? Look at this. This is his portrait that he posed for and approved. I was talking to Jess about it, and she came up with, she goes, it's like we both, I don't know, simultaneously, but I think she used the word, he looks like he's like suffering, like he's some kind of a martyr. Put it up again, Kev, will you? He looks like a martyr, doesn't he? And I had a listener email me today saying she's insulted by his expression. I'm just laughing out loud. I think, honest to God, I think this is one of the funniest portraits I've ever seen in my life. And it's typical of Link Chafee in so many ways. John Boehner survives some unorganized rumblings inside the right wing of the Republican Party. CNN.com's got the headline here. A little opposition he had to overcome, but you want to look at the most uncomfortable, awkward moments between Nancy Pelosi and John Boehner? I don't know. She sounds like she's talking on Sesame Street, and then he lays a kiss on her that I think splattered all over Washington. Look at this.
This is the people's house. This is the people's gavel. In the people's name, it is my privilege to hand it to the Speaker of the House for the 114th Congress, the Honorable John Boehner. Mr. Speaker. God bless you, Mr. Speaker. God bless America.
Ugh, yuck, yuck, she was out of there pretty quick, wasn't she? She's like doing a nursery rhyme. I don't know. And we never really close with something that's still serious, but we cannot leave the day without talking about this Paris attack. The headline is fairly self-explanatory, and the CBS story is shocking.
Fire erupted in central Paris after masked gunmen stormed the offices of a satirical newspaper. French President François Hollande called the shooting a shocking terrorist attack and said those responsible would be hunted. Witnesses say the gunmen stormed the editorial meeting of the Charlie Hebdo weekly, killing 4 cartoonists, including the chief editor. One cartoonist who survived the attack said the shooters spoke French fluently and claimed to be Al-Qaeda members. The offices were firebombed in 2011 after the paper printed a caricature of the Prophet Muhammad that many Muslims found offensive.
There's no doubt the First Amendment is under fire from the radical community, no doubt. But, you know, what does it mean for us? I'm not sure. All I know is this. We released a bunch of folks from Gitmo recently, and the president wants to release even more and shut that thing still to replace or to make good on a campaign promise. Doesn't bode well for our security. All right, when we come back, we will discuss this epidemic, which, I don't know, I have no answers. Next. The numbers are just, I think, unbearable. And I don't know how you can read them and say, oh, that's too bad, and just keep moving on. Here's the latest headline. Die-in at Cold State House entrance stage to fight epidemic of overdoses in Rhode Island. Yeah, someone's got to make some noise over this whole thing, and there's some live cell video from it. And my guests, Janina and Holly, are here to say, what, like, hello, right? McFly, right? Yes?
Exactly.
Welcome to the broadcast. I told these two fine ladies to just lay it on me tonight, because I don't have any answers. I've done a half a dozen programs on this. We have a significant amount of increase in this problem of overdosing. Mm-hmm. You're going to a funeral right after our taping today, correct?
Correct, I am, for a 22-year-old young man who died on January 2nd. He was, I believe, the first overdose death of 2015, and we've also had an additional. I did.
You did know him?
I actually lived in a recovery house with him. And what a recovery house is, it's a house where, you know, people that are in recovery live together. It's kind of a supportive environment. And I lived in a recovery house with him after he was released from a treatment center.
So you are a recovering?
I am a person in recovery from substance abuse.
Person, okay.
Yes.
I don't even know what the term is. Is addict not
not such a great word.
Not a good word,
yeah.
okay.
I refer to myself as a person in long-term recovery, and then I'll explain what that means for me.
Okay.
Is that I haven't used,
drugs.
you know, alcohol or drugs in over 12 years.
Okay.
So
is it
addict
appropriate
is,
to say congratulations?
yeah, sure.
Yes.
Okay.
It was
All right,
definitely
good.
hard work.
No,
It was definitely hard work.
And it is hard work.
It is
Daily.
hard work. It's daily hard work.
Okay.
But you know what? With the support, it's definitely possible. I think that when we refer to people as an addict, we're kind of describing people by the condition they have, right? It's a person with substance use disorder or a person with an addiction condition. I don't refer to people as diabetic. I refer to people with diabetes.
Sure, makes sense.
So it really does help the reduction of stigma when people use the terminology.
Well, okay, good, because you know that was beautifully said. Now it made it crystal clear, because I think we got a stigma problem
We do.
that's attached to the idea. Well, people are doing it to themselves.
Right.
You know, it's like, so tell me why that should not be getting in front of the conversation about this unbelievable thing going on.
Last year's overdoses, I mean, the statistics and the data available speak to that. We saw over 200 people die in the state of Rhode Island last year from 30 different communities. And the people that died from overdoses ranged in age from 15 to age 65. And I think oftentimes what people think about is if someone's overdosing, it's got to be heroin or an illicit substance. And that's simply not true. You can overdose on Percocets, on Vicodins, on OxyContin, on the opioid medications.
And we've talked, you know, with all the experts I've had so far in the last year, you know, when I'll say it again, loyal viewers have heard me talk about it. You know, that script I got from the dentist where he yanked 4 teeth, you know, I took the one Vicodin, I think. I said, I don't feel good on this. I never took another one again. It was on my bathroom shelf for God knows how long before I properly disposed of it, you know, with the authorities. But I got a buddy of mine that says, hey, man, you know, you got in, because my back is killing me, and I'm afraid for him and others. So it's not just the guy on the street or the gal on the street that's, you know, stigmatized, it's the non-stigmatized.
Well, I think this is probably the best point to bring up for somebody, such as yourself. You're in the public eye and things like this. There's nobody that is absolved of the risk of this particular condition. If you go to the doctor, if you injure yourself, you go and see an orthopedic, a dentist, a regular doctor. I mean, the Department of Health is trying to get people to sign into the prescription monitoring program, but there's not one person that doesn't feel pain, that doesn't go to their doctor and say, please alleviate this, that isn't at risk for this to become something that they can't handle, that it becomes the condition. Very true. A lot of people take it, never bothers them again, no big deal.
So there are some tendencies, and now you've been working, you work in hospitals as well.
I do. I'm the executive director of Rhode Island Cares, and then I also manage a program within the local hospital ED program where we send recovery coaches in to talk with people that have recently overdosed on opiates.
So you've seen what I've had experts say prior here, which is that there are some folks that you can kind of figure out might have tendencies toward addiction with this kind of medicine. So there is some science involved with this, right?
There's a lot of science involved.
People doctor shop when they're addicted to prescription medications. Oftentimes people will go into, and I had done it myself, going into an emergency room. My tooth really, really hurts. Well, we can't get you to see a dentist. You're in the emergency room. Let's give you something to alleviate the pain.
Phony story, you mean?
Oh, yes. Yeah. And I don't blame doctors. They're doing what they can to help alleviate their patients' symptoms. They're being caring.
But in that very statement, the die-in yesterday is not to protest. It's to say we really need to address this in a lot of different ways. We don't necessarily blame.
Good point. Good way to break. We'll come back. What did the die-in do? What is the message that's not being received when we come back? So just some scenes from yesterday's, it's called the die-in. I made a mistake when I met Holly to say, hey, so what did you accomplish with the protest? It's not a protest.
Display of community concern.
Right. It's like a, yo, hey, we got a serious emergency on our hands here. Tell me, both Janina and Holly are involved in this very important Rhode Island Communities for Addiction Recovery efforts. Board member, executive director, you work in the field, you don't, but you're obviously very focused, having been someone who is recovering. What's missing? What were you trying to prove there at the State House on Inauguration Day? Is there something that someone's not doing at the State House? Why?
Well, I mean, I think the takeaway message from yesterday was we really do need the Good Samaritan Overdose Prevention Act.
What is that?
Recertified. So the Good Samaritan bill primarily absolves you of criminal charges. If you call 911, if somebody's overdosed, there's some paraphernalia around, you can then not be arrested and call 911 and save somebody's life. So years ago,
if you and I are getting high and you're going off the deep end and I call 911, I don't have to worry about being busted.
That's right.
And that is not in place right now?
It is in place, but the act itself is up for recertification, which means we could lose it.
Okay.
And so the reason we staged the tie-in yesterday at the beginning of the legislative session, this is something they can take care of very quickly, take care of it, do what they need to do, recertify it, and then move on and delve into kind of action that has a larger impact on the death toll.
Yeah, the Narcan thing is important.
Narcan is huge. Our state, Rhode Island, is actually kind of leading the country in these efforts where Narcan, also known as naloxone, is in
it's in recovery houses.
It's in recovery houses, and what it does is it reverses the effects of an opioid overdose. And so
you can get trained on it.
You can be trained on it. There is a program at Miriam Hospital called Pony. And what it does is it teaches community members and people who are interested, family, friends, loved ones, how to administer Narcan in the case of an overdose.
You can also get that at CVS or Walgreens, and you can get it without a prescription. So family members that are concerned for their loved ones that may be showing signs of substance use disorder, they can get it right there at the pharmacy.
A couple other great things. You look like you're about to say something.
No,
I was going to say a couple other great things is that, Rhode Island has now equipped our emergency personnel with naloxone. So our state police have it, our fire and rescue have it. And since this was starting to be used and we started tracking data, we have over 1,300 doses of Narcan administered by our emergency personnel and by our hospital
Well, that's all
rooms.
great, and we got to keep doing it. We got to get better. But how come the numbers are blown up?
I think the data is available.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that we haven't seen a lot of people dying from substance use disorder. I just think the data is available. It's become an issue that people want to address. There's too many young people.
So are you telling me now
too
that the
many
data is available on a more sophisticated basis? Is the trend increasing, or is the data getting better?
I think both.
Both.
A little bit of both.
I would go for both.
The availability of the prescription drugs, and then as the Department of Health kind of comes down, takes care of this, says, hey, stop this. You want to check out these education things, not so much prescribing. Then the availability doesn't get there. Heroin is available, and it happens. So
it's like a sloppy Joe sandwich, man. It just keeps spilling out the other side.
It really does.
All right, well, good work. I mean, I want you to come back. I want you to come on the radio so we can talk some more. We'll schedule that, and I'll let you know when that's going to happen so that we can have a constructive dialogue, ring some phones, have a little bit of learning, because you cannot have conscience and look past these stories and the numbers and think that it's okay.
all life matters.
Yeah.
All life matters, and recovery is definitely possible.
And you learned about how to refer to addiction, so you learned something tonight. Last word when I come back. Stay with us. Here's a quote from Jim Barron, God rest his soul, on his Twitter feed. "We don't elect leaders anymore. We elect clients of political consultants." Boy, we're going to miss him, and we will do a best effort, maybe even tomorrow, to talk more about him and journalism in general. Have a great night. See you on the radio tomorrow.